Took the drunk driver to court who hit me, but my lawyer boyfriend is defending him. Now he is begging me to take him back after losing the case. Okay, so around 10 days ago I, 25F, got into a car accident which absolutely wasn't my fault. My car was parked outside a friend's house and I was sitting in the car, waiting for her to show up. I was scrolling on the phone when all of a sudden, another car crashed into mine from the back. The impact of that was really bad and unfortunately, I ended up spraining my neck. I suffered from a severe spinal injury because I'd fallen off a ladder around 5 years ago and this collision just aggravated that. The car crash led to a ligament in my neck being torn and I've been in severe pain since then. I couldn't get out of my car to confront the driver of the other car, but as soon as my friend had heard the crash, she'd come running out of the house and had immediately called 911. When they arrived, we were both rushed to the hospital and while nothing had happened to the other guy, I ended up in a cervical collar. I wasn't too worried about my car since insurance would take care of that, but I did press charges against the guy who hit me. I didn't know what he was on since my car was literally parked and the street we were on was wide enough to drive by without hitting anyone, so it was insane that he'd crashed right into my car because he'd been drinking. I knew that because when he visited me in the hospital room, he was still reeking of alcohol but had tried to cover up the smell with a disgusting mix of perfume and disinfectant. I told the police that I wanted to press charges that day itself, but the guy who hit me, I'll refer to him as Chris for the sake of clarity, was very well connected and the DA refused to acknowledge it as anything other than an accident, and they even tried to gaslight me into believing that I was parked in a really weird spot. Chris had just swerved to avoid hitting a cat and had unfortunately ended up crashing into my car. I later found out that Chris was related to a really wealthy businessman, probably his nephew or something, I'm not sure, but anyway, that was how he managed to dodge the law. The car would be taken care of by my insurance company since I'd been in an accident and I had all the proof and the police report said so as well, but I wasn't satisfied with just that. This Chris guy had literally hit my car head on and was most definitely drunk, so he owed me a lot more than a weak apology. There was also the issue of my healthcare because I had to bear the entire cost of my visit, and trust me, it was an insane amount since I had to get some tests done, an x-ray. I had to pay for the collar plus medicines and all of it came up to almost $2,000. My insurance wouldn't cover all of it since I didn't have to stay overnight and neither did I have to spend 24 hours. I run my own small-scale bakery business, and I can afford to live nicely. I have a small apartment of my own and I can afford rent, gas, electricity, water, and all the other essentials, and I can even afford to splurge once in a while, but the hospital bill was huge and I absolutely cannot just afford to drop that sort of money without disrupting my budget for the month, and I can't exactly skimp on anything else either. I still have to pay my bills and buy groceries and stuff that I need for my bakery business. And also it was just so infuriating that some drunk guy could drink and drive, hit my car, send me to the hospital, and put me in excruciating pain and discomfort for the next God knows how many days and still just get away with it because of his connections. So I decided to sue the guy, and since my boyfriend, 29M, is a lawyer himself, my first choice was obviously him. That was a week ago and we were having dinner when I told him about this. He got really uncomfortable when I told him about it and said that I should just drop it because it wouldn't be worth it to go after someone like Chris. I was taken aback by his attitude towards this since he could see that I was in a lot of pain and knew that I'd had to spend a bomb on healthcare, and yet he wanted me to drop it. We got into a fight over it and he told me that he was too busy to represent me in such a petty fight, which was just so hurtful and made me rethink my entire relationship with him. We've been together for only 6 months, but I've known him for a year and a half and he's been my go-to person ever since we became friends. The way he behaved just didn't sit right with me, and even though I knew that he was well respected in his field, I'd never imagined that he'd make me feel so small. I was acutely aware of the difference in our income and position in society, but I tried my best not to feel inferior. Maybe being a baker wouldn't make me as wealthy as he aspired to be, and maybe it wasn't an important career, but I did what I loved, I had fun doing what I do, and most importantly, I didn't rely on my boyfriend for money, so he had no right to make me feel that way. I didn't speak to him after that because I was very hurt about what he'd said. So I approached a cousin of mine who just started out, and she was more than happy to help me file the petition against Chris. I didn't tell my boyfriend about any of this and had made up my mind to break up with him by the end of this week because he'd been really disrespectful and I wasn't going to stand for it. But before I could call him, he decided to contact me. Yesterday, Chris was notified of the litigation process and apparently he'd hired my boyfriend to represent him in court, and he'd called me to warn me. He said that I needed to be careful because I'd be up against a really good lawyer, so my case needed to be airtight. He even suggested that I stop the proceedings and settle out of court because if I did go ahead, I was destined to lose. I knew that this was just that other guy's way to play mind games with me and intimidate me into backing off, but it wasn't gonna work. I did feel bad about the way my boyfriend was acting though. For some reason, he thought this was funny. I was already hurting not just physically but also emotionally, and that was enough to send me over the edge. So I told him it was a good thing that we were already in court because now I could dump him since it had turned into a conflict of interest for me. After saying that, I disconnected the call, and since I still wasn't feeling satisfied with what I'd done, I decided to call his sister up and tell him what he was up to. His sister and I are really close and have been for 5 years. We became friends in college, and after we graduated, she invited me to her house for Thanksgiving dinner one year, which is where I met my boyfriend. I told her all about what he'd done and the fact that he was about to defend a guy who's obviously been drinking and driving, knowing that his family would be all up in arms about it. They're all really into activism and are very strict about the causes they support, but my boyfriend doesn't really care. It always felt strange to me, but now I guess he's just not a very socially conscious guy, and I just wasted half a year of my life trying to be with someone who had no principles and would do anything for money. He's constantly at odds with his father, who's also an ex-lawyer but is active in the circuit and usually finds out what cases his son chooses through someone who knows someone, so my boyfriend can't exactly hide anything from his family either. His sister was also not on board with what he'd done and the way he was behaving, so she promised me that she'd look into it and make sure he apologized to me. She couldn't guarantee that he'd back out of the case, but she said that she'd make sure he was sorry for making me feel small and being arrogant. She told me that he had already not been on good terms with his family for a while now, and what I'd told her had just made it very clear to her that her brother was going down the wrong path and she couldn't take it. She thanked me for telling her and even advised me to dump him because he'd lost sight of what was important because of how ambitious and greedy he'd become. She even seemed pleased when I told her that I'd already left him, so that was how bad his relationship with his family was now. I can't say I'm surprised, since his family has always tried to be ethical and his sister would constantly complain about the kind of people my boyfriend would choose to defend in court just because it paid well. I didn't like it much either, but I tried to stay out of it as much as I could, since I didn't think it was my place to talk about how he worked and what clients he represented. He didn't talk about my work, so I didn't want to overstep my boundaries either, but this time, I was involved directly and he'd insulted me far too much for me to keep it quiet anymore. Within half an hour of my phone call, my boyfriend started calling me relentlessly. I decided to answer him after almost 10 missed calls, and he immediately started apologizing for the way he behaved and said that he'd just been joking earlier. I told him that I wasn't going to forgive him because he'd really hurt me, and I also told him that now his family was also aware of the situation, so he could expect a call from his parents soon enough as well. That's when things got bad, and now I think I might have been an off for getting his family involved. He told me that I had no right to speak to his family no matter how hurt I'd been. They'd already been hounding him to work for better clients, and now it was about to get worse just because of what I'd done. He was really unhappy about my decision to speak to his sister and said that he was relieved that we were no longer together, so now he wouldn't have to hold back in court and would make sure I didn't get anything out of this. I hung up after that and blocked him, but I've been really worried ever since. We're supposed to appear in the local small claims court, and I know it's not a very high profile case. I've only filed a claim of $5,000 since I think I'm owed that, because I'll definitely have to visit the hospital in the future as well for my neck after this. I'm still worried that I might lose because my boyfriend is a good lawyer from what I know and rarely ever loses. Also, I think I might have overstepped my bounds and really shouldn't have told his sister like a tattletale. He is a 30-year-old man, after all, fully capable of making his own decisions, so maybe he's right and I really was out of line. Now I'm considering just cutting my losses and apologizing to him. I don't know if that'll solve anything, but I can at least try. So should I do it? Ida for dumping my boyfriend, telling his family that he's representing someone who is certainly guilty? Update 1. Hey. So I decided not to apologize to my boyfriend because I was not wrong. I read all the messages here. I went through the comments on my post. I talked to my parents and a few friends of mine, and I really thought about this long and hard. There's just no conceivable way that I'm in the wrong here. He messed with me, so I messed with him, tit for tat. And if he wasn't in the wrong here, he wouldn't be getting so defensive either, so it's clear who has a guilty conscience in this situation and is trying to hide it by talking a big game and being overconfident. He might be a skilled lawyer, but I have the truth on my side and I have full faith in myself and my cousin. That's all I need anyway, so he can say whatever he wants, but it's not gonna faze me. I also found out that this Chris guy actually went to high school with my boyfriend and they have a couple of friends in common. I guess that explains how he seemed to know who I was talking about when I mentioned Chris earlier. His sister was actually the one who told me about this, and it all finally made sense. All of them went to the same high school, and she knew that Chris was an exceptionally spoiled and entitled brat who'd grow up to be nothing but a wastrel. He'd partied his way through life, and now, in his late 20s, he was still struggling to find his footing at any job and was a high-functioning alcoholic. It just pissed me off to no end that this guy still had a license and a nice car in spite of his alcoholism. Just because he was related to the right people and was rich enough to get away with whatever he wanted. While I still had my car in the repair workshop and had to wear a collar so that my neck would heal and would have to take painkillers every other day just to be able to work. It was so unfair already, and my boyfriend choosing to represent this idiot instead of me was the cherry on top. I guess some people really do think money comes over morals, but it's okay. That just tells me what kind of person he is. His sister also told me that they got into a huge fight over this with my now ex-boyfriend when his dad decided to confront him about what he was up to. He put his foot down and told him that he could either back out of this and choose not to defend this Chris guy, or his family would sever ties with him, and that led to a lot of drama, but eventually, my ex decided to step back and cut his parents off. Yeah, because he was getting paid a hefty amount to defend Chris and there was no way he was letting that go. He wouldn't even choose his own family over money, so I'd been really damn stupid to think that he'd choose me over money. At least I know where I stand now, and so does his family. We're supposed to meet in court tomorrow and I'm nervous, but I also know that I'm being honest here and he's not, and that just strengthens my faith in myself. Also, the fact that even strangers on the internet are on my side on this one speaks volumes about who's right and who's wrong. Hopefully, the judge will also be able to see that and we'll be able to settle this. Update 2. So this is the night before the hearing and my ex just sent me a message from a different number saying that there's still time and I can back off even now. He said that his client is willing to pay me the $2,000 plus some more and settle out of court, but I'm not okay with that. I want that guy to acknowledge that he screwed up royally and pay me no less than $5,000. I'm not even being greedy right now, I just think that that's what I'm owed because $2,000 is what I had to spend only on the day of the accident. There are more medical bills to cover because I'll have to get medicines, consultations, and physiotherapy to properly heal from this incident. I've been suffering from backaches almost daily and it's affecting my work as well. This is why I'm not willing to settle for anything less than $5,000, and I'm sure that it's completely fair and reasonable. I don't even know what the fuss is all about, honestly. He's super rich, so why can't he just drop $5,000 for an accident that he caused? It just doesn't make any sense. It's not my concern anyway, so I just blocked the other number as well, and I'm going to try and fall asleep soon so that I don't have to entertain my ex's attempts to contact me and throw me off my game. This is really the last thing that I need right now, and I'm pretty sure that he's still trying to get into my head and mess with me because he thinks he's going to lose. I mean, that must be the case if he's so desperate all of a sudden. He knows he's gonna lose and is trying to prevent that now. Update 3. Hey, everyone. We finally had the hearing today and it went better than I'd expected. We were the last ones to present our case and my cousin was fab, but of course, my boyfriend is more skilled and was able to get the judge to assign a second hearing. I won't get into the details because it's boring and irrelevant, and the more I think about it, the more frustrated I feel because there's still a chance that I might end up losing money fighting this. I'm grateful that my cousin isn't charging me much because we're family, but it's still money. I know being ethical and sticking to your principles is a great thing and blah blah blah, but right now, I don't feel so good about the fact that there's going to be a second hearing. We'd managed to collect all the evidence we could find to strengthen our case, but unfortunately so did they, probably with their slimy and unethical ways. They definitely had to bribe some people, I know that for a fact. Anyway, I was in a foul mood when I was waiting for my cab to arrive, and then my ex decided to speak to me and make it worse. I wasn't even looking at him and was trying my best to ignore him, but I didn't have my AirPods with me, so I couldn't exactly ignore his voice. He told me that Chris's dad had decided to cut him off after the accident because that had been the last straw, and now, he was totally on his own. He was down to the last few thousand in his account and really couldn't afford to pay me the amount that I was asking for, which is why he'd asked me to settle out of court and settle for way less than what I'd claimed. I pretended not to hear him, but he went on and on about how I needed to have a heart and that it was unlike me to be so greedy. After a while, I just snapped at and told him that I did have a heart, but I preferred to save it for people who deserved it. And his friend Chris most certainly did not. Worst comes to worst, his parents would take him back and pay me the amount instead. I'm sure the parents who raised this man-child would make sure that their son didn't go to jail over something so petty, and anyway, his uncle was rich enough to make things happen, which is how they got a second hearing to happen. But I didn't have the luxury to rely on other people to bail me out of trouble constantly, so neither was I being heartless and nor was I being greedy. I was just looking out for myself, and just because I wasn't constantly running after money like my ex didn't mean that I wasn't in need of it. He then stared at me and kept trying to come up with arguments against me but couldn't, so his mouth just kept opening and closing like a goldfish for a few seconds. And finally, after half a minute, my cab arrived and I left him standing there. I'm not entirely happy with how today went, but at least I got to chew my ex out, so that was a win for me. Now I just hope we can wrap this up by the next hearing. Update 4. Hi. So it's been 3 weeks and yesterday, I finally received the amount that was due. Just as I'd predicted, Chris's parents stepped up at the very last minute and bailed him out yet again, but it doesn't matter because at least the verdict was in my favor. What was interesting is what happened after the judgment. I went home and unlike the previous day, my ex didn't try to stop me and talk to me outside of court and instead, decided to wait until we got home. A few hours after I'd come home, he showed up at my door with a bouquet of roses and asked me out. He said that he was truly apologetic about everything that he'd said and done so far, and he always knew that he was going to lose, which is why he'd been such an egoistic idiot, but he'd realized that he was being stupid and now wanted me to give him a second chance. I did what anyone in my place would have done and slammed the door shut right in his face. He tried to talk to me, but I told him that I had no interest in entertaining him and his fake apologies, so he could save his breath and just leave. The ego trip he'd been on before he lost such a petty case today was the real him, and I didn't want to wait around for him to get worse. He was unethical and cold, and I don't think that's what I'm looking for in a partner at all. In fact, I really don't think anyone is. So he needed to leave me alone now and regret his decisions on his own time instead of trying to argue with me, or else I would report him to the cops. He left without another word, and I'm hopeful that he won't come back or try to contact me later on now. I told his sister all about it and she supported my decision wholeheartedly. She told me that her parents were still not willing to speak to him, and neither had he apologized to them, which was nuts because his dad was also a well-respected lawyer in his prime and was better than him and had taught his son all that he knew. He's just an ungrateful and I'm glad I finally took the blindfold off and saw him for what he truly is. Now, I'm just gonna do it and hopefully, I'll be better soon. Both physically and emotionally. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Found out from daughter that wife cheated on me with guy she met at grocery store, so I did this. My wife, 33, was an expert shopper. It helps that her grandmother and mother were very materialistic people while keeping a budget. She would hunt for the perfect sale, which is why I, 37, didn't usually jump up to go with her because she could be out for 6 hours or more. She would go out once a week, every Saturday, leaving the house by 6 a.m. She'd go to Saturday's market, then go to the mall, eat lunch, and probably shop more. We were married for 8 years, and the whole time she was in the habit of doing this. She took our 5-year-old daughter with her sometimes. My wife was a consistent light in my life and I did not know she didn't deserve my trust. She started taking our daughter less and less often, leaving the house without waking her up or giving her the choice. I asked her why, and she said she could get back sooner without bringing her along because a lot of the time she would start to complain and get tired long before my wife was ready to come back home. I suppose that was a reasonable explanation, but my daughter and I were both bummed because she enjoyed those trips with her mom. Our daughter actually started asking her each time if she could go with her, and she'd say no each time. She'd do something else with her the next day, or bring home something nice for her, but it wasn't the same. I let it go for a while, but eventually, I felt like I had to say something. I confronted her and told her she needed to take her with her that Saturday. She was not happy. I couldn't believe how inconvenient it was for her. She started to accept it and actually did follow through, but that Sunday, she went out alone. Usually, we all had family time and practiced meditation. Our girl always turned it into a game of peeking without getting caught. When the wife got back, she was really happy, like everything was fine. Then, my daughter asked a question that led to the discovery of what was really going on. She asked her mom if she met the man with the puppet today. My wife forced a laugh and said no, he's only at the market on Saturdays. I asked who this was, and before my wife responded, our daughter said he was the man mommy kissed yesterday. I looked at her with wide eyes. She knew we had to talk. I excused myself to another room and waited for my wife to set up our daughter with toys before joining me. I quizzed her until she was blue in the face, but she couldn't convince me her lies were true. She tried telling me our daughter was talking about something else, but I knew her speaking capabilities were pretty accurate. She even looked at my wife like she was going to be in trouble with daddy. She knew it was wrong, and she wanted me to know. So my wife eventually came clean. She said he was a nice guy that she got close to over the years she'd been going to the market. He liked her more than friends, and she didn't want to break his heart, so she started giving him kisses. I didn't think there was any way she could believe this was okay. I told her she betrayed my trust by doing this, even by being friends with this guy without telling me. I'd like to know who she's involved with, even if only for safety's sake. Now I was suddenly aware of a guy she'd gotten to know for years, introduced to our daughter, and kissed. I looked her straight in the eye and asked her if she ever slept with this man or anyone else. She blushed hard, looked away, and told me no. How much more obvious it could have been that she was lying to me. I stared at her, but she only tried asking if we could leave the room now, and I said no. I told her to tell me the truth because her whole body looked like she was lying. Her mouth got really dry, and she started to dry heave. She excused herself to our bathroom and threw up. I told her she needed to get it off her shoulders so she could feel better, but she pretended not to have anything to say. I told her I didn't want her to go to Saturday's market anymore, and she lost it. She said this was one of her greatest joys in life, and I told her that she spoiled it for herself, because she started kissing an older guy. I wondered if she said older to try to get me to let it go like I'd picture an old lonely man. I wasn't a fool. So, for a whole month, she didn't go anywhere over the weekend. Finally, she made an excuse to go out, but she took our daughter with her to help convince me she wasn't up to no good. They'd come home with groceries or other stuff that proved they weren't at Saturday's market. I hated that this had become an issue between us now. Every time she left I wondered if she was seeing Mr. Kisser. On the first day she didn't offer to take our daughter, I followed her. She didn't go to Saturday's market, but she did go to someone's house. Before I got confirmation, I knew this was App's house. I could feel it in my bones. It was like my wife's energy and emotion were contagious to me. I knocked on his front door after my wife went inside. App answered it, and he asked him why I saw my wife just come inside. My heart was pounding out of my chest as I pictured this guy meeting my daughter. He looked young and confused, but before he could ask me anything, I asked if he was the puppet guy at Saturday's market. He covered his mouth for a second and asked me if I was her husband. I said yes, and yelled my wife's name. She came out and he told her to leave, then he told me she introduced herself as a widower. I felt like my heart stopped beating permanently and I was only surviving off air and my still blood. My wife came rushing out like she had a right to be mad, brushing past me. I followed her. She frantically tried to get in her car, but I grabbed her keys from her and ran to my car, locking the doors. She watched helplessly as I took her house key off before giving them back. She told her parents I kicked her out for no reason, so they let her stay with them and arranged to have a truck come get her stuff. They came over to visit with our daughter and asked me what really happened. I told them the truth, and they must have made my wife's life at their house a living hell because every day she told me she hated me for telling them what happened. She moved out in just 5 weeks, opting to take turns sleeping on different friends' couches, rather than stay under their roof. The divorce went in my favor, and my wife is at least partially involved with our daughter.
The girl I always protected was being blackmailed by our janitor, so I coordinated a sting with hidden mics, camera footage, and backup from a few brave students, and together we brought down a man who'd been preying on girls for years without getting caught. Back in high school, there was this janitor who everyone loved, and his name was Alex. He was the kind of guy who knew every kid's name, gave fist bumps in the hallway, and fixed more broken hearts than lockers. One time, there was this skinny girl who used to come into school once a week, sit alone in the canteen without any food, and not talk to anyone. Everyone ignored her. But Alex? He saw her. I noticed he'd meet up with her after school, always in the janitor's closet. At first, I thought it was just random. Maybe she needed help with something. But it kept happening. Week after week. Same time, same place. Curiosity ate at me. So one day, when the corridors were empty, I took a peep through the window. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what I expected to see. Something shady, maybe. Something awful. But what I saw made my eyes literally pop out of my head. He was handing her boxes of sandwiches, enough to last dozens of meals. I had to stop myself from running in there and giving Alex a big hug. When she turned toward the door, I panicked and ran. This was in the 9th grade. I fully believed since that day they were best friends, but then by 11th grade, everything changed. Everyone had found out about Alex's closet meetups with the girl. At first, people started spreading rumors that he was a creep, and the strange part was that the girl he helped claimed he was creepy too. But the strangest part? Alex admitted to being a creep and said these rumors were true. This spread like wildfire. So much so that the principal got involved, and he was going to call her mother to see what the deal was. But he couldn't, because her mother was a known psychopath who mistreated her at home, meaning if he did call home, the girl's life would be put on the line for allowing herself to be taken advantage of. And so, Alex agreed to take the brunt of these rumors, just so the girl's mother wouldn't get involved. This wasn't known information, but I knew all this because the girl actually became my friend. We can call her Sally. After that, I don't know how the janitor managed to keep his job, but he did, and the rumor had its consequences. Soon, the entire school was bullying Alex. They'd constantly break his equipment, which he had to pay to replace, and one guy even peed into his mop bucket when he wasn't looking. I wanted to tell everyone the truth, to defend him. But there was one thing stopping me. You see, Sally's home life was actually a lot worse than I thought, complete with discipline, substance use, neglect, her mom bringing new guys home every weekend, the works. I did think about calling CPS, but Sally told me not to bother, because they had already done multiple house visits, but didn't do anything about it. And this was exactly why I refused to defend Alex. You see, in the midst of all this, Alex did a complete 180. One day, he asked Sally to meet him in the janitor's closet. We thought he wanted to discuss the situation or something, maybe offer an alternative. But no. Instead, he blackmailed her. He told her that if she didn't start repaying him for what he'd done for her, he'd tell her mom that she had told him to give her sandwiches and extra food, that she forced him into treating her injuries. And because Sally's mom was off the rocker, this was a serious threat. At that moment, Sally knew she had no way out, so she agreed. That day in the janitor's closet, he stole her innocence. He told her he had every intention of doing it again whenever the urge came up, that he'd been waiting for this moment ever since that day in 9th grade, when she was sitting all by herself. I saw her lip quiver when she told me this, and I let her break down into my arms. But as I softly stroked her hair and caressed her face, a storm was brewing inside me. I had every intention of ruining that man's life, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, and I would stop at nothing to get my revenge and make Alex pay. By morning, I had approximately 0 good ideas. This wasn't like the movies where some teenager magically outsmarted the bad guy. This was real life, with real consequences. The next day at school, I couldn't focus on anything. My chemistry teacher asked me a question, and I just stared blankly until she moved on to someone else. During lunch, I watched Richard mopping the hallway like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just revealed himself to be a monster. I wanted to walk up and punch him in the face, but that wouldn't solve anything. "You look like trash," Sally said, sitting next to me in the cafeteria. She tried to smile, but I could tell she hadn't slept either. "Thanks. You really know how to make a guy feel special," I replied, pushing my untouched lunch toward her. We sat in silence for a while before Sally spoke again. "He wants to meet today after 7th period." My stomach dropped. "You can't go. If I don't, he'll tell my mom everything," she whispered. "I can't risk that." That's when the first part of a plan started forming. Not a good plan. Definitely not a smart plan. But it was something. What if we record him? Get evidence? Sally shook her head immediately. "My phone's broken, remember? Mom threw it against the wall last month." "Right. I'd forgotten about that." "Use mine," I said, pulling out my Nokia brick. It wasn't fancy, but it had a voice recorder function. "Hide it in your pocket. If he says anything inappropriate or threatens you again, we'll have proof." She looked doubtful. And then what? That was the problem. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Then, we figure out the next step. Sally reluctantly took my phone, and I showed her how to start the recorder. The plan was for her to meet Richard, record whatever happened, and then we'd meet up at the park a few blocks from school afterward. I spent the rest of the day barely breathing, watching the clock tick painfully slowly toward 7th period. When the final bell rang, I headed straight to the park and waited, and waited, and waited some more. After an hour, I started to panic. What if something had gone wrong? What if Richard had found the phone? What if he'd hurt her? Just as I was about to run back to school, Sally appeared, walking quickly toward me. She looked shaken but unhurt. Without saying anything, she handed me my phone. "Did you get it?" I asked. She nodded. "He didn't touch me today, just talked. Made it clear what he expects next time." I played the recording. Richard's voice came through clearly. talking about how Sally owed him and how he'd been patient enough. He laid out exactly what he wanted from her in disturbing detail and repeatedly threatened to tell her mother everything if she didn't comply. It was sickening, but it was evidence. So now what? Sally asked, her voice small. That was still the big question. We couldn't go to the principal. That sleazeball would probably just sweep it under the rug. The police might not take it seriously either, especially with just an audio recording as evidence. Plus, involving authorities might mean Sally's home situation would come to light, potentially making everything worse for her. We need more, I finally said. One recording might not be enough. Over the next week, Sally met with Richard 3 more times. Each time she recorded their conversations. Each time his demands got more explicit and his threats more severe. And each time she managed to make excuses to delay the payment he was demanding. I don't know how she found the strength to face him repeatedly, knowing what he wanted from her. She was braver than I could ever be. After collecting 4 recordings, we had enough to prove a pattern, but we still didn't know who to trust with the information. That's when I remembered Ms. Rodriguez, my freshman year English teacher. She'd always seemed genuinely concerned about her students, and I'd heard she had reported a coach once for inappropriate behavior toward female students. If anyone would know what to do, it might be her. I approached Ms. Rodriguez after class one day and asked if we could talk privately. She must have seen the desperation on my face because she immediately agreed. In her classroom, with the door closed but the window uncovered, smart teacher move, I explained the situation without naming names at first. I told her about a theoretical student being blackmailed by a staff member and asked what the right course of action would be. She listened carefully, her expression growing more concerned. Jordan, this doesn't sound theoretical. Is someone in trouble? I hesitated, then nodded. I have recordings, I said, pulling out my phone. 4 of them. Ms. Rodriguez's face hardened as she listened to the first recording. She stopped it halfway through. I've heard enough. Who is this? Richard, the janitor. And he's blackmailing my friend Sally. The look that crossed Ms. Rodriguez's face was a mix of anger and determination. This is completely unacceptable. We need to take this to the authorities, not the school administration. She explained that in cases like this, going directly to the police was better than getting the school involved first. Schools sometimes prioritize their reputation over student safety. Ms. Rodriguez offered to go with us to make a report, and even said she'd help Sally with her home situation if needed. For the first time in weeks, I felt like we might actually have a chance at stopping Richard. But when I told Sally about Ms. Rodriguez, she panicked. No police. My mom will find out. She'll kill me, Jordan. I'm not exaggerating. I tried to explain Ms. Rodriguez's plan, how she'd help with both situations, but Sally was adamant. I can handle Richard a little longer. I can't handle my mom if she finds out I've been talking about our family to outsiders. We were back to square one, or so I thought. The next day, Tyler Jenkins, a senior on the wrestling team, cornered me in the hallway. Hey, I heard you and Sally talking in the library yesterday, he said in a low voice. About the janitor. My heart dropped. Had he heard everything? Was he going to tell Richard? Tyler must have seen the panic on my face because he quickly added, I want to help. Turns out Tyler had a younger sister who Richard had been extra friendly with recently. Nothing had happened yet, but Tyler had noticed the pattern. The same pattern that had started with Sally. His sister was a freshman, struggling to fit in, and Richard had been giving her special attention, offering her a safe space in his closet to get away from bullies. I'm not letting that happen to my sister, Tyler said firmly. Suddenly we had an ally, a senior, a wrestler, someone with friends and influence, and most importantly, someone else who knew what Richard was doing. Tyler brought in his friend Marcus, who was the editor of the school newspaper. Marcus couldn't publish anything about Richard directly. That would be libelous without proof, but he knew how to investigate. He also knew how to spread information strategically. Our group grew to 5 when Lisa Chen, a quiet junior who worked in the front office as an aide, overheard Marcus and Tyler talking. Lisa had her own story about Richard making her uncomfortable last year, touching her shoulder too long while complimenting her work hanging up decorations. Nothing she could prove, just a feeling that something wasn't right. But now it fit the pattern. We formed an unofficial task force, Operation Takedown Richard, as Tyler jokingly called it. Each person had a role. I was the coordinator since I had the most direct connection to Sally. Tyler was our muscle in case things got dangerous. Marcus handled information gathering and spreading strategic rumors. Not lies, but selective truths that would make people watch Richard more closely. Lisa used her position in the office to track Richard's movements and access his schedule, and Sally continued to record her interactions with him, building our evidence. We discovered Richard had been working at the school for 15 years, far longer than any of us realized. Through careful conversations with alumni who returned to visit, Marcus learned there had been rumors about Richard and female students for years, but nothing had ever been proven. Several former students described similar patterns of him finding vulnerable girls and offering them special help. It made me sick to think about how long this had been going on. How many Sallys had there been before? How many girls had suffered because no one connected the dots? Our plan evolved over several weeks. We needed to catch Richard in a way that couldn't be denied or covered up by the school. Audio recordings were good, but we needed something more concrete, and we needed to ensure Sally's home situation wouldn't be exposed in the process. The opportunity came in late October, about a month into our operation. The annual Halloween dance was coming up, and Richard always volunteered to help with setup and cleanup. Lisa discovered he'd requested access to the school the entire weekend for deep cleaning after the dance. That meant he'd have the building mostly to himself on Sunday. Marcus came up with the idea to set up a sting operation. Sally would agree to meet Richard on Sunday, supposedly to finally give him what he wanted. We would set up hidden cameras borrowed from Marcus's dad's security company. Tyler and I would be hiding nearby to intervene if necessary. It was dangerous and probably illegal in some way, but we were desperate teenagers trying to stop a predator. Sally was terrified, but determined. I'm tired of being afraid, she said when we finalized the plan. I'm tired of him thinking he owns me. The day before the operation, I was a nervous wreck. What if something went wrong? What if Richard hurt Sally before we could intervene? What if we got caught trespassing at school? The what ifs were endless. I almost backed out. Almost told Sally we needed to just go to the police despite her fears. But then I saw Richard in the hallway, watching a group of freshman girls walk by. And the look on his face made my decision clear. This had to end, one way or another. Saturday night after the dance, we put our plan in motion. Marcus's dad was out of town, so we borrowed 3 small security cameras without permission. Lisa had made a copy of the janitorial staff key during her office aid period. Tyler picked the perfect hiding spots for the cameras in the janitor's office. One on a shelf behind some cleaning supplies, one disguised as a vent near the ceiling, and one inside an empty box of latex gloves. We worked quickly, knowing we only had about 20 minutes between when the dance ended and when Richard would arrive to start cleaning. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. When we heard footsteps in the hallway, we ducked out the back exit, barely making it out before Richard turned the corner. Phase 1 complete. Now came the hard part. Sunday morning, Sally texted me that she'd confirmed the meeting with Richard for 2 p.m. I picked her up at noon, and we went through the plan one more time. She would wear a wire, actually just my phone hidden in her pocket again. She would lead the conversation to get Richard to admit what he'd been doing. She would not, under any circumstances, actually let him touch her. If he tried, she would use the code word homework, and Tyler and I would burst in. We arrived at the school at 1:30. The building was eerily quiet on a Sunday. Using Lisa's key, we let ourselves in through a side entrance. Tyler and I took our positions in a supply closet near the janitor's office, leaving the door cracked open just enough to see and hear. Sally went alone to meet Richard. Richard arrived precisely at 2 p.m. From our hiding spot, we could hear their conversation clearly. "I was starting to think you were avoiding me," Richard said, his voice friendly in a way that now seemed sinister. "No, just been busy with school stuff," Sally replied, her voice remarkably steady. Their footsteps moved toward the janitor's office. The door closed. Tyler and I looked at each other, tense and ready. Through the crack in our door, we could see into the small window of Richard's office. The cameras were recording everything. The conversation started innocuously enough. Richard asked about school, about teachers, about how Sally was doing. Then it turned. "So, you ready to start paying me back for all my help?" he asked, his voice suddenly different. "What exactly do you want from me?" Sally asked, clearly trying to get him to be explicit for the recording. And explicit he was. He laid out in disgusting detail what he expected from her, what he'd been dreaming about since 9th grade. He reminded her of how he'd protected her, fed her, kept her safe from her mother. He talked about the other girls before her who had been grateful for his help. I felt sick listening to him. Tyler's hands were clenched into fists so tight his knuckles were white. Then Richard moved toward Sally. "Let's start with a kiss," he said. "I have a lot of homework today," Sally said loudly. Our code word. That was all we needed. Tyler burst through the door first, with me right behind him. Richard's face went from confusion to anger in an instant. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, backing away from Sally. "It's over, Richard," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "We have everything on camera. We have recordings of every meeting for the last month. We know about the other girls." For a moment, I thought he might attack us. He was an adult man facing 2 teenage boys, and despite Tyler's wrestling prowess, Richard had at least 50 pounds on him. But then Richard's expression changed to something calculating. "No one will believe you," he said calmly. "It's the word of 3 troubled teens against a staff member who's worked here for 15 years. You really think anyone will take your side?" "They will when they see the videos," Sally said, finding her voice. She moved to stand between Tyler and me. "And when they hear the tapes. And when the other girls start coming forward?" Richard's face went pale. "What other girls?" "We've been talking to people," I said. "Former students. Current students. You've been doing this for years, Richard. Did you think no one would ever connect the dots?" For a brief, terrifying moment, Richard looked like he might lunge at us. But then his shoulders slumped. "You're bluffing," he said. But he didn't sound convinced. That's when Marcus appeared in the doorway, right on schedule. He'd been waiting outside for our signal. Tyler had texted him when we entered the janitor's office. Marcus held up his video camera. "Not bluffing. And I've got the last few minutes on video too, just as backup." The plan had worked almost perfectly, but we hadn't anticipated what happened next. Richard suddenly bolted toward the door, shoving past Marcus with surprising speed. He ran down the hallway toward the exit. Tyler took off after him while I stayed with Sally. We heard a crash, then shouting. When we reached them, Tyler had Richard pinned on the ground near the school's front entrance. A decorative Halloween display had been knocked over in the struggle. Fake spiderwebs and plastic pumpkins scattered across the floor. "Call the police," Tyler grunted, struggling to hold Richard down. Marcus was already on it, using the main office phone to dial 911. "Student reporting an emergency at Westlake High School," he said clearly. "We've apprehended a staff member who has been sexually harassing and attempting to assault students. We need police immediately." The next few hours were a blur. Police arrived within minutes. We showed them the recordings and explained what had been happening. Officers took statements from each of us separately. They confiscated our cameras as evidence. One female officer took Sally aside for a private conversation that lasted nearly an hour. I was terrified that Sally's home situation would come to light, that everything we'd done to protect her would backfire. But Sally later told me she'd only disclosed what was necessary about Richard, keeping her home life out of it for now. The officer had given Sally her card, telling her to call any time if she needed help with anything else. It seemed the officer had read between the lines but wasn't pushing. The story exploded across the school the following day. Richard had been arrested on multiple charges. The principal called an emergency assembly to address the situation, his face grim as he assured students that the administration had no knowledge of this behavior. No one believed him, of course. Teachers looked shell-shocked, especially the ones who had worked with Richard for years. Other girls started coming forward. Not many at first, just 2 former students who contacted the police after seeing the news. But it was enough to confirm the pattern. Richard had been preying on vulnerable girls for over a decade, hiding behind his reputation as the friendly, helpful janitor who everyone loved. The consequences rippled outward. The principal was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into how this could have happened under his watch. The school board launched a review of hiring and supervision practices. Parents demanded answers at a heated community meeting. Through it all, Sally remained remarkably calm. When rumors inevitably started about her being one of Richard's girls, She held her head high. Her newfound confidence surprised even me. It was like taking down her tormentor had unleashed something inside her, a strength she hadn't known she possessed. Our little group stayed tight through the chaos. Marcus published a carefully worded article in the school paper about student advocacy and speaking truth to power, without directly mentioning our involvement. The principal's temporary replacement had forbidden any specific coverage of the case. Lisa continued gathering information from the office, keeping us updated on the official response and investigation. Tyler started a sort of informal support network for students who had experienced harassment but were afraid to report it. And me? I stuck close to Sally, bringing her lunch every day, walking her to classes, making sure no one gave her trouble about the Richard situation. We became inseparable. My feelings for her grew stronger, but I kept them to myself. She had been through enough without having to deal with my teenage crush. She needed a friend more than anything else. About 3 weeks after the arrest, Sally surprised me by bringing her own lunch to school. 2 sandwiches, in fact. She handed one to me. My aunt's staying with us for a while, she explained when I looked confused. My mom's been better with her around. They've been cooking actual meals. It turned out that the chaos with Richard had indirectly led to positive changes. After seeing how close Sally had come to being victimized again, her Aunt Barbara had insisted on staying with them. She'd confronted Sally's mother about her treatment of Sally, and for once, her mother actually seemed to be listening. The therapy sessions had just begun, and there were no miraculous overnight changes. But it was a start. Sally started coming to school every day. Her grades improved. She even joined the photography club after Marcus noticed her taking pictures during lunch one day and encouraged her to check it out. Slowly but surely, she was building a normal teenage life. The preliminary hearing for Richard's case was scheduled for December. The prosecutor warned us that we would all likely need to testify eventually, but for now, our statements and the recordings were enough to keep him in custody without bail. He'd been fired from the school, of course, and his picture had been in the local paper. His life as he knew it was effectively over. I should have felt triumphant. We had taken down a predator, potentially saved other girls from becoming his victims, and helped Sally escape his clutches. But instead, I felt hollow. What had happened to Sally, both with Richard and at home, should never have been possible. How many adults had failed to notice or act? How many systems had broken down to allow these abuses to continue? One afternoon in early December, Sally and I were sitting in the local coffee shop working on homework. She looked up suddenly and said, "Thank you for everything." I don't think I ever properly said that. "You don't need to thank me," I replied, embarrassed. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said firmly. "They wouldn't. Most people didn't even notice me until all this happened. You saw me. You helped me. You believed me." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and went back to my biology notes, trying to ignore the warmth spreading through my chest at her words. A week later, Sally met Jeff Williams in photography club. He was a senior, tall and artistic, with an easy smile and genuine interest in Sally's photography. Before I knew it, they were spending time together, heads bent over photo prints or camera settings. I tried not to feel jealous when I saw them laughing together in the hallway or sitting close during lunch. Jeff was a good guy. I knew that. He treated Sally with respect and seemed to genuinely care about her ideas and opinions. And he was patient when she was quiet and never pushed when she wasn't ready to share something. He was, in many ways, exactly what she needed after everything she'd been through. Still, watching them grow closer was harder than I expected. I had spent months protecting Sally, caring for her, being her rock during the worst time in her life. And now that things were finally getting better, someone else was there to share in her happiness. The irrational part of me felt like I was being replaced, even though I knew that wasn't fair or true. One Friday in mid-December, Sally bounced up to me before first period, more animated than I'd ever seen her. "Jeff asked me to the winter formal," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "My first real dance. My aunt is taking me shopping for a dress this weekend." I forced a smile. "That's great, Sal. You deserve to have some fun." She studied my face for a moment, her expression turning thoughtful. "You're coming too, right? We could all go as a group. You, me, Jeff, and maybe you could ask someone?" The thought of spending the evening watching Sally and Jeff slow dance made my stomach twist. But how could I say no to her when she looked so happy? "Yeah, maybe," I said non-committally. As the dance approached, Sally's transformation continued. She gained a healthy amount of weight. She got a new haircut that framed her face perfectly. She started wearing colors instead of just black and gray. She smiled more easily and laughed more freely. Seeing her blossom was amazing, even if it hurt that I wasn't the reason for her happiness. I decided not to go to the dance. I told Sally I had a family thing that weekend, which wasn't completely a lie. My cousin was visiting from out of state, but I could have skipped out on the family dinner if I'd really wanted to. The truth was, I just couldn't handle watching Sally slow dance with Jeff all night while I stood awkwardly by the punch bowl trying to look like I was having a good time. The Monday after the dance, Sally cornered me at my locker before first period. She was practically glowing, wearing this blue sweater that made her eyes pop. It was weird seeing her so normal, like a regular teenage girl excited about a dance instead of someone who'd been through hell. "Why didn't you come?" she demanded, crossing her arms. "And don't say family stuff. Tyler said he saw your cousin's Instagram and you guys were done with dinner by 8. Busted." I should have known Tyler would somehow catch me in the lie. "I just didn't feel like going," I mumbled, rearranging the books in my locker like they were suddenly the most interesting things in the world. "You've been weird ever since Jeff asked me to the dance," she said, her voice softening. "Are you mad at me or something?" I slammed my locker shut harder than I meant to, making Sally jump. "I'm not mad at you. I could never be mad at you. The words got stuck in my throat. "Just what?" she pressed. The bell rang, saving me from having to answer. "We're gonna be late," I said, already backing away toward my first class. "Talk later, okay?" I spent the next week avoiding any one-on-one time with Sally. It wasn't hard since she was spending most of her free time with Jeff anyway. I told myself I was giving them space, but really, I was being a coward. I couldn't bring myself to tell her how I felt because I was afraid of ruining our friendship, and I couldn't pretend everything was normal because it hurt too much. During this time, we got word that Richard had taken a plea deal. He'd serve at least 5 years and have to register as an offender afterward. It meant none of us would have to testify in court, which was a huge relief for Sally. The principal wasn't coming back either. The investigation had uncovered that he'd ignored previous complaints about Richard. The school board quietly asked for his resignation. In January, things with Sally's mom took an unexpected turn. Her aunt announced she was moving in permanently, and that Sally's mom was getting help for her issues, which was adult speak for rehab or therapy or something. Sally didn't share all the details, but she seemed cautiously hopeful about the changes at home. My aunt actually signed the permission slip for the spring photography trip, Sally told me one day when we were paired up for a chemistry lab. It was the longest conversation we'd had in weeks. Mom would never have done that before. That's awesome, I said, genuinely happy for her despite the awkwardness between us. The overnight trip to the state park? She nodded, carefully measuring out some blue liquid into a beaker. Jeff's going too. He's been helping me practice landscape shots on the weekends. Of course he was. I focused on reading the lab instructions, trying not to show how much that stung. Jordan, Sally said suddenly, putting down her pencil. What happened to us? We used to talk all the time, and now you barely look at me. I kept my eyes on the paper. Nothing happened. We're good. Bullshit, she whispered, glancing around to make sure our teacher hadn't heard. You've been avoiding me for a month. Did I do something wrong? The genuine hurt in her voice made me finally look up. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm dealing with some stuff. What stuff? Maybe I could help. That's what friends do, right? Friends. The word felt like a punch to the gut. Before I could stop myself, I blurted out, I like you, okay? Not as a friend. And watching you with Jeff is killing me. But I'm trying really hard to be happy for you because you deserve to be happy after everything you've been through. Her eyes widened, and for a horrifying moment, I thought she might laugh or get angry. Instead, she just looked sad. Oh, that single syllable told me everything I needed to know. She didn't feel the same way. I nodded and went back to the lab, my face burning with embarrassment. We finished the experiment in silence, communicating only when absolutely necessary. When the bell rang, I bolted for the door, but Sally caught up to me in the hallway. Jordan, wait. I stopped, keeping my eyes fixed on the floor. I had no idea you felt that way, she said quietly. It's fine, I said, even though it definitely wasn't. Really, you don't have to say anything. I know you're with Jeff and he's a good guy. He is, she agreed. But that doesn't mean I don't care about you. You're important to me, Jordan. More than you know. I finally looked at her. Just not in that way. She hesitated, which was answer enough. I need you in my life, she said, as my friend. Can we still be that, please? What was I supposed to say? No, I can't be your friend because I want more, after everything we'd been through together? So I nodded and forced a smile. Yeah, of course we can. The rest of winter crawled by. I joined the baseball team again when spring training started, which gave me a legitimate reason to be busy after school. Sally and I still talked, but there was a new carefulness between us, like we were both afraid of saying the wrong thing. It sucked, but it was better than not having her in my life at all. In March, something unexpected happened. Lisa, who was still working in the office, overheard a conversation between the new principal and the school counselor. Apparently, a freshman girl had come forward saying a teacher had been making her uncomfortable. The teacher? Mr. Peterson, the gym teacher who'd always given me the creeps. They're actually investigating it, Lisa told our group at lunch. We still met up occasionally. Me, Sally, Tyler, Marcus, and Lisa, though less frequently than during the Richard situation. Like taking it seriously from the beginning. That's because of what happened with Richard, Marcus said. The school can't risk another scandal. It's more than that, Sally said. I think we showed people they can speak up and be believed. That they don't have to deal with this stuff alone. I looked at her across the table, struck by how different she seemed from the skinny, silent girl I'd first noticed in 9th grade. She caught my eye and smiled. A real smile without any awkwardness. And something shifted between us. Maybe we could actually be normal friends again. The photography trip came and went in late April. Sally returned with amazing photos and stories about hiking at dawn to catch the perfect light. She didn't mention Jeff much, which I appreciated. Instead, she talked about techniques she'd learned and ideas for her portfolio. Her passion for photography had become something real, not just a club she'd joined on a whim. In early May, Sally showed up at my house on a Saturday morning, which hadn't happened in months. My mom let her in, looking surprised but pleased to see her. They'd always gotten along well. What's up? I asked when she appeared in my doorway. I was still in my pajamas, hair sticking up in every direction. Jeff and I broke up, she said without preamble. I sat up straight, trying to process this. What? Why? I thought things were good. She shrugged, coming to sit on the edge of my bed like she used to before everything got complicated. They were. He's great, but I realized something on the photography trip. What's that? I asked, my heart suddenly racing. That I wasn't being fair to him. Or to myself. She picked at a loose thread on my comforter. He wants to go to art school in California after graduation. I don't know what I want yet, but I know I'm not ready for that kind of serious relationship. Oh, I said, not sure how to respond. Are you okay? Yeah, actually. It was mutual. We're still going to be friends. She looked up at me. But that's not really why I came over. No? Number I came because I miss you. Like the real you and me. Before things got weird. I swallowed hard. I miss that too. Good, she said, smiling. Because there's a baseball game next weekend, and I was thinking I might come watch. If that's okay with you. It was more than okay. It was the first step back to normal. Or whatever our new normal would be. I didn't ask if her showing up after breaking up with Jeff meant anything. I didn't want to push or assume. For now, having her back in my life as a real friend was enough. The rest of the school year flew by. Our little group started hanging out regularly again. Tyler got accepted to state on a wrestling scholarship. Marcus won a journalism award for his coverage of student activism, his carefully coded way of writing about what we'd done. Lisa decided to study criminal justice after discovering she had a talent for investigation. Sally continued to thrive. Her photography got selected for the district art show. Her aunt officially became her legal guardian, with her mom's consent. She started talking about maybe applying to community college to study visual arts. Small steps toward a normal life. As for me, I was just trying to figure out who I was outside of the Richard situation and my feelings for Sally. Baseball helped. So did starting to look at colleges. I discovered I was actually pretty good at statistics and thought maybe I'd study sports management or something. The last day of junior year, Sally and I walked home together like we used to. The summer stretched before us, full of possibilities. I never thanked you properly, she said as we reached the corner where we usually parted ways. For what? I asked, squinting at her in the bright June sunshine. For seeing me when no one else did. For bringing me lunch all those days. For believing me about Richard. For helping me take him down. For not abandoning me when things got bad. She trailed off, then took a deep breath. For loving me enough to let me figure out who I am, even when it hurt you. I felt my face get hot. You don't have to thank me for any of that. I know, but I wanted to. She stepped closer and hugged me, her arms wrapping tight around my waist. I hugged her back, breathing in the familiar smell of her strawberry shampoo. When she pulled away, she looked up at me with a small smile. I'm not ready for anything right now. I'm still figuring out who I am when I'm not terrified all the time. But someday, when I am ready, well, I hope you'll still be around. My heart did a weird flippy thing in my chest. I'm not going anywhere, I promised. She nodded, seeming satisfied with that answer. Good, because I've got 2 tickets to the summer concert series at the park. First one's next Friday. You in? Definitely, I said, unable to stop the grin spreading across my face. We stood there for a moment longer, just looking at each other. Then Sally shouldered her backpack and started walking toward her aunt's house. See you Friday, she called over her shoulder. I watched her go, realizing something important. Whether or not Sally and I ever became more than friends didn't actually matter. What mattered was that we'd saved each other in different ways. She was safe now. She was happy. And somehow, against all odds, we'd taken down a predator and changed things at our school for the better. I headed home, already looking forward to Friday. Whatever happened between me and Sally in the future, friendship, relationship, or something in between, I was just grateful she was in my life. And for now, that was more than enough. My college roommate tried to break me by taking my sister hostage, so I made sure she paid the ultimate price. Now, 5 years later, she's at her parole hearing, promising this isn't over. Before college started, I had this dream where I'd be like the main character of those movies you always see on Netflix, finally get my first boyfriend, have a huge social life, have a bunch of parties with my rich friends on yachts, and my roommate Bella was the first introduction to my disappointment. At first, she was kind. Her wardrobe was all pink, soft brunette hair, always smelled nice, never gave me any reason why I shouldn't trust her. And after dozens of late-night deep conversations, she had a childhood so traumatizing that I can't even describe it without tearing up. And because of it, she just wanted to be kind to others. So after the first month, when she couldn't even get out of bed after her boyfriend broke up with her, all I wanted was to do everything I could to make things easier for her. I revoked the initial rule we had agreed on of one of us needing to tidy the entire room every day, and told her I would cover it. For weeks, I did all her grocery shopping. I even went to classes I didn't even take just to write notes on what she had missed. It was so much work that I even had to get my younger sister to help out, because I figured investing into our friendship meant investing into a lifelong friendship, something I so desperately wanted. But around Christmas break, things took a turn. She broke the rules and bought a ginger emotional support cat. Well, I love cats, so I had no issue with this. If anything, I supported it. But every morning I would wake up to the smell of rotten milk because Bella refused to buy a litter box, so the cat would pee all over my clothes. After a few weeks, I told Bella that if she didn't start taking care of it, I would report the cat to the RA. So for a while, she actually started getting her act together. No more moldy coffee left in cups beside her bed. No more being a full-time maid. But then came my breaking point, because when I came back from Christmas break, I couldn't even open the door because of how much BS covered the entire floor. And when I finally made it in, I vomited in my mouth. On the walls was cat pee that Bella had never cleaned. My bed was covered in period stains that weren't mine, and a boy I didn't recognize was lying right beside her smoking a cigarette. Bella, what the actual F? Shush, she interrupted. The cat is sleeping. Rage boiled my blood. When she wasn't looking, I took a photo of the entire room, cropping out the cat because I wanted to keep her LOL, and sent it to the housing office, practically begging to be relocated. But they just replied with a, sorry, housing is full. That's when I knew I had to take matters into my own hands. I decided to take care of the cat because there were only a few months left, and I just wanted to make sure she was okay. I called the cat Miso and bought her kitty litter. I made sure the room was clean, and every night Miso would crawl onto my chest to purr and stroke her face against mine. Ugh, so cute. I love her. So we were in the middle of our little oxytocin party when Bella looked over. What the F, I didn't know it could do that, referring to the cat. I nodded enthusiastically. Right, she's so cute. Here, let me bring her over. I then carried Miso over to Bella, expecting her to purr like she does with me. Instead, she immediately got her claws out and sprinted under my bed. It took everything in me to stop myself from bursting out laughing. Bella's face turned completely red. What the F? Shush! This time I was the one to interrupt her. You're going to scare Miso. That night I went to bed with a huge smile on my face, but when I woke up to feed Miso, she was gone. I shook Bella awake, and she turned over with a chaotic smile plastered on her face. Where's Miso? I asked, voice shaking. Oh, I put her down, she said with a smile. Panic ran through my body, and she continued. After all, there was clearly something wrong with her, because what kind of pet doesn't like their owner? I walked out, not wanting her to see me cry. I was ready to play the long game and get my hands dirty, literally. For every day until our lease ran out in June, I collected her trash bags and stored them in my sister's car that she never used. At the end of June, I told her that if she wanted her parents to come over, I would be sure to clean the entire room for her, and that crusty bitch fell for it. Then came the big day. As she left to collect her parents from the airport, I filled the entire room with her old sanitary pads and tampons, the ones I had collected from our bin, all over her bed, the drawers, and the floor. The entire room smelled like fish carcasses that had been left in the sun for 10 years. When her parents came in, I hid in the maintenance closet. I didn't get to see their reactions, but I heard it. Her mom screamed at the top of her lungs. The dad gasped so hard I thought he was going to choke. I heard the door slam as they walked back out. I never saw Bella again because her parents had deemed her as unfit to live alone and pulled her out of Yale. I thought that was that. Like a ding-dong the witch is dead moment, lol. But I was wrong because 3 days later I got a call. My sister was missing. My hands shook as I held the phone. My mom was sobbing on the other end. She kept saying my sister Victoria never came home from her shift at the bookstore. I hung up and immediately called Victoria's phone, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. My brain went into overdrive. Victoria had been helping me deal with Bella's mess for months. She knew everything. She'd seen everything. And now she was gone. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a coincidence. I grabbed my laptop and checked Bella's Instagram. Her account was still active. The most recent post was from yesterday. Just a photo of a coffee cup with the caption, "New Beginnings." Nothing suspicious, but something felt off. I scrolled through her stories. Nothing there either. Then I checked her Twitter. Private. Her Facebook was deactivated. I needed to think. I called my mom back and told her I was coming home. The drive took 3 hours but felt like 10. My mind kept racing through every possibility. What if Bella did something? What if she hurt Victoria? But that seemed crazy. Bella was manipulative and gross but not violent, right? When I got home, my parents were a wreck. The police were already there, their uniforms making everything feel more real and terrifying. They asked me a bunch of questions about Victoria's friends and habits. I didn't mention Bella. Not yet. I needed to be sure first. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone, hoping Victoria would text. Around 3 a.m., I got a DM on Instagram from Bella. My heart stopped. I opened it with trembling fingers. "Hey girl, heard about your sister. That's so scary. Hope she's okay." The message seemed normal. Too normal. I didn't respond. The next morning, I drove back to campus. I needed to talk to people who knew Bella. Maybe find out where she went after her parents pulled her out. I started with our RA, Janet. She told me Bella's parents came and packed up all her stuff the same day. They seemed really angry and wouldn't even look Janet in the eye. Janet didn't know where they took her. Next, I talked to some girls from our floor. Most of them avoided Bella anyway. But one girl, Diana, mentioned something interesting. She said she saw Bella talking to some guy in a van the night before she left. The guy looked sketchy, wearing all black with a baseball cap pulled low. Diana thought maybe Bella was buying substances or something. This was getting weirder by the minute. I decided to text Bella back. I kept it casual, asked her how she was doing, where she ended up. She responded within minutes, said she was staying with her parents in Connecticut, taking a gap year to figure things out. She asked about Victoria again, said she saw a post from my mom on Facebook about her being missing. I played along, told her we were all worried sick. Then Bella said something that made my blood run cold. She mentioned Victoria used to help me clean our room sometimes. How did she know that? I never told her. Victoria only came by when Bella was in class, unless Bella had been watching us somehow. I tried to stay calm, asked Bella if she remembered Victoria at all. She said no, just that I mentioned having a sister who helped out sometimes, but I knew I never told her that. Never. My phone rang. It was my mom. They found Victoria's car. It was parked at a rest stop 2 hours away, but Victoria wasn't there. The police were checking security cameras. I told my mom I'd come back home immediately, but first I had another stop to make. I needed to check something important. I drove straight to Victoria's apartment, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. She lived off campus with 2 other girls in a converted Victorian house near the university district. Maybe they knew something. The building looked peaceful from the outside, painted pale yellow with white trim, but my stomach churned with anxiety as I climbed the creaky wooden steps to their second-floor unit. When I got there, her roommate Gloria opened the door. She looked worried, dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept well. Said Victoria had been acting weird the past few days, always checking her phone, looking over her shoulder, jumping at small noises. I asked if I could check Victoria's room. Gloria let me in without hesitation, wringing her hands nervously. Victoria's room was neat as always, her bed perfectly made with the quilt our grandmother had sewn for her 18th birthday. Nothing seemed out of place. Her collection of succulents lined the windowsill in their hand-painted pots. I checked her desk drawers, trying not to disturb the careful organization, found her planner, the one with the floral cover she'd bought at the start of the semester, flipped through the recent pages. Most entries were normal stuff. Work shifts at the campus bookstore, study sessions for her online classes, grocery lists with her weird obsession with buying exactly 3 apples every week. But 3 days ago, she'd written something strange in red ink. Just 2 words. She knows. My stomach dropped. I took a photo of the page with shaking hands and kept searching. Under her bed, I found a shoebox. The Nike one from the running shoes I'd bought her for Christmas. Inside were printouts of text messages. Not from Victoria's phone, though. They were screenshots someone had sent her. The messages were between Bella and some guy named Philip. Reading them made me feel sick. Bella was talking about me in the vilest terms, calling me names I'd never repeat, saying I ruined her life, that I deserved to suffer the way she had. Philip kept encouraging her, feeding her anger, telling her to get revenge, saying I had it coming. The last message was from 4 days ago. Bella wrote, "I know exactly how to hurt her." Philip responded, "Through the sister?" Bella's reply was just a smiley face emoji. That simple yellow face felt more menacing than any threat could have. I stuffed the papers in my bag and ran out, nearly tripping over Victoria's laundry basket in my haste. Called my mom mom on the way to the car, told her I might have a lead. She said the police found something on the security cameras from the parking garage. A van pulling up next to Victoria's car, someone getting out. But the angle was bad. The camera old and grainy. They couldn't see faces. Just that Victoria got in the van willingly, like she knew the person. No signs of struggle or force. I hung up and called Bella. She didn't answer. I texted her asking if we could talk. Said I was scared and needed a friend. Playing into her ego usually worked. She called back within 10 minutes. Her voice was syrupy sweet. Too sweet. Like artificial honey. She asked if there were any updates on Victoria. I lied and said no. Then I asked if she was really in Connecticut with her parents. She said yes. Why would I doubt her? I told her I just missed having someone to talk to. She ate it up. Started going on about how hard everything had been for her. How her parents were being so controlling. How she just wanted her life back. How unfair it all was. I let her talk while I drove, making sympathetic noises at appropriate intervals. The highway stretched endlessly before me. Gray asphalt under gray skies. Then I asked if she knew anyone named Philip. There was a pause. Just a second too long. The kind of pause that screams guilt. She said no. Why? I made up some story about Victoria mentioning that name before she disappeared. Bella's voice got weird, higher pitched. Said that was strange. Maybe I should tell the police about this Philip guy. Then she had to go. Her mom was calling her for dinner. The line went dead before I could respond. After we hung up, I pulled over at a rest stop and really looked at those text messages again. The timestamps were all from late at night, always after 2 a.m. I remembered Bella used to stay up super late on her phone, the blue glow visible under her door. I'd assumed she was texting her ex or scrolling social media, but maybe she was planning something else, something darker. I decided to track down this Philip guy. Searched his number on Google. Nothing. Tried Facebook. Found 12 different Philips from our school. Started going through their profiles one by one like a detective in some crime show. Most were clearly not involved. Too young, too old, or had girlfriends who would have noticed late-night texting. But one profile stood out. Philip Chen. He was in Bella's psych class last semester. His profile was mostly private, but his cover photo showed him at some party. And there in the background, barely visible behind a group of red solo cups, was Bella. Same pink sweater she always wore. Same predatory smile. I messaged him. Said I was Bella's old roommate and needed to talk about something important. He read it, but didn't respond. I waited an hour, refreshing obsessively, then messaged again. This time I mentioned Victoria. He blocked me immediately. That told me everything I needed to know. Innocent people don't block at the mention of a missing person. I drove home through increasing traffic and showed my parents the text messages. My dad wanted to take them straight to the police, but my mom pointed out they didn't prove anything concrete, just that Bella was angry and talking to some guy. We needed more. The police wouldn't act on just this. They were already treating Victoria's case as a probable runaway situation since she got in that van willingly. The detective had used the phrase, left of her own accord, which made me want to scream. That night, I lay in bed thinking, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars Victoria had helped me put up when we were kids. Bella was smart, manipulative. She wouldn't do anything that could be traced back to her directly. She'd use other people, like Philip, or maybe others. I thought about all those late-night conversations we'd had, all the things I'd told her about my family, about Victoria, how Victoria was anxious about starting college next year, how she trusted people too easily, how she'd do anything to help family. I'd handed Bella a blueprint for manipulating my sister. The next morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number, just a photo. It was Victoria sitting in what looked like a basement. Concrete walls, single bare bulb overhead. She looked scared but unharmed. The message said, she's fine, for now. Stop looking for her. I screenshot it immediately and tried calling the number, already disconnected. Of course, I showed my parents. My mom broke down completely, sobbing into my father's shoulder. My dad called the police with shaking hands. They said they'd traced the number but warned us it was probably a burner phone. They upgraded Victoria's case to kidnapping, started asking more questions. I finally told them about Bella, showed them everything. The detective, a tired-looking guy named Walter with coffee stains on his tie, said they'd look into it but needed more evidence to get a warrant or anything. Bureaucracy at its finest. I couldn't just sit around waiting. I went back to campus and started asking around about Philip Chen. Turns out he'd dropped out mid-semester. Mental health issues, supposedly. But his roommate Jose told me something interesting over cheap beer at the campus pub. Philip had been obsessed with some girl who wouldn't date him. Used to talk about her all the time. The roommate couldn't remember her name but said she had brown hair and wore lots of pink. Sound familiar? I tracked down Philip's ex-girlfriend through LinkedIn. Her name was Cheryl. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop downtown. Told me Philip changed after he met some girl in his psych class. Started staying out all night, getting secretive about his phone. When Cheryl confronted him, he broke up with her via text. Said he'd found someone who understood him. But from what Cheryl could tell, this new girl was just using him, making him do things for her, buy her stuff, drive her places at odd hours. Philip thought they were dating, but Cheryl never saw them together in public. Classic manipulation tactics. I asked if she knew where Philip was now. She said he moved back home with his parents after dropping out, somewhere in New Jersey. She didn't have an address but remembered the town, Ridgewood. I thanked her and left. Googled Philip Chen Ridgewood, New Jersey in the parking lot. Found an address through some sketchy people finder website. It was only 2 hours away. I could be there and back before dinner. I knew I should tell the police. Let them handle it. But what if they didn't act fast enough? What if Bella convinced Philip to do something worse? What if their bureaucratic procedures cost us precious time? I couldn't risk it. I told my parents I was going back to campus to get more of Victoria's things. Instead, I drove to New Jersey, my conscience warring with my desperation the entire way. The house was a normal-looking suburban home. White siding, black shutters, American flag on the porch, 2 cars in the driveway. I parked down the street and watched for a while. Saw an older woman, probably Philip's mom, leave in one of the cars. Waited another 30 minutes. No one else came or went. What? I walked up and rang the doorbell. No answer. Rang again. Finally heard footsteps. Philip opened the door. He looked terrible. Greasy hair, bloodshot eyes, wearing the same clothes he had on in his Facebook photo from months ago. He tried to slam the door when he saw me, but I stuck my foot in. Told him I knew about Bella, about Victoria. His face went white. He said he didn't know what I was talking about. I showed him the text messages on my phone. His hands started shaking like leaves in a storm. I pushed past him into the house. He didn't try to stop me, just stood there looking like he might puke on his parents' hardwood floors. I asked where Victoria was. He shook his head frantically, said he didn't know. I told him to cut the crap, showed him the photo someone had sent me. He stared at it for a long time. Then he started crying, actually crying, big, ugly sobs, saying Bella made him do it, that she promised they'd be together if he just helped her this one time, that she said she loved him. I asked again where Victoria was. He said Bella had her, wouldn't tell him where, just used his van to pick Victoria up, told Victoria that I was in trouble and needed her help, that I'd been in an accident. Victoria believed it because Bella knew so much about our family, details I'd shared during those late-night talks. Philip drove them somewhere, but Bella made him wait in the van. When she came back, she was alone. Said Victoria was safe and would be fine as long as I backed off. Said it was just temporary. I asked what Bella wanted. Philip laughed bitterly. Said Bella didn't want anything specific. She just wanted to hurt me, make me suffer like she felt I'd made her suffer. The whole thing with her parents finding the room full of used period products had destroyed her relationship with them. They'd put her in therapy, monitored her every move, took away her car, her credit cards, her freedom, and she blamed me for all of it. I recorded our whole conversation on my phone. Philip was too messed up to notice. He kept rambling about how Bella had played him, how she'd pretended to like him just to get him to help, how stupid he felt, how she'd kissed him once and he thought it meant something. I asked if he had any idea where Bella might have taken Victoria. He mentioned Bella talking about some cabin her family owned, somewhere upstate, but he didn't know exactly where. She'd only mentioned it once when talking about family vacations. I left Philip's house and immediately called the detective, played him the recording. He said it was enough to bring Philip in for questioning, maybe enough to get a warrant for Bella's parents' place. I drove home feeling a mix of hope and dread. We were getting closer, but Victoria was still missing, still in danger, still with Bella. When I got home, there was another message, this time on Instagram, from Bella's account. It was a video. Victoria was sitting in what looked like a small room, wooden walls, maybe that cabin Philip mentioned. Bella's voice came from behind the camera. She wasn't showing her face. She told Victoria to tell me she was okay. Victoria looked at the camera and said she was fine, that Bella was taking care of her, but her eyes were terrified. I could see her hands shaking slightly. The video ended with Bella saying I had two choices. I could leave her alone forever, never mention her name again, delete all evidence of what happened between us, pretend we'd never met, or Victoria would stay in that cabin indefinitely. She'd be fed and safe, but I'd never see her again. I had 24 hours to decide. The screen went black. I showed my parents and the detective. Walter said they were working on getting Bella's parents to cooperate, but these things took time. Warrants, judges, legal procedures, time we didn't have. My mom was hysterical. My dad kept pacing, wearing a path in our living room carpet. I felt numb. This was all my fault. My stupid revenge plan had put Victoria in danger. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about those conversations with Bella. All the things she'd told me about her traumatic childhood, her mother's coldness, her father's absence. Was any of it real, or had she been manipulating me from day one? I thought about her parents' reaction to the room. Their shock had seemed genuine. Maybe they really didn't know who their daughter was. Maybe none of us did. I decided to take a risk. I found Bella's mom on Facebook, Margaret Williams. Her profile was pretty locked down, but I could see she worked at a dental office. I messaged her, said I was Bella's former roommate and that it was urgent. She read it but didn't respond. I waited an hour, then called the dental office, asked for Margaret. The receptionist said she wasn't in today. Family emergency. That had to mean something. That gave me hope. Maybe the police had already contacted them. Maybe they were cooperating. I refreshed my phone obsessively, waiting for updates. Finally, around midnight, Detective Walter called. They'd executed a warrant at Bella's parents' house. Bella wasn't there, but they found something interesting. A property deed for a cabin in the Adirondacks, inherited from Bella's grandmother. The parents claimed they didn't know Bella even had access to it. They thought it had been sold years ago. The police were heading there now. It would take them 3 hours. Walter told us to stay put, let them handle it, but I couldn't. Victoria was my sister. This was my mess. I told my parents I was going to try to sleep. Instead, I snuck out and started driving north. The roads were empty, dark, endless. I knew it was stupid, dangerous, but I kept thinking about Victoria alone with Bella, scared, confused, not understanding why this was happening to her. I pushed my old Honda as fast as it would go, used Google Maps to find the address from the property deed. It was in the middle of nowhere. Perfect place to hide someone. About an hour into the drive, Bella called me. I almost didn't answer. Then I thought maybe I could keep her talking, distract her until the police arrived. I picked up. She sounded calm, too calm. Asked if I'd made my decision. I told her I needed more time. She laughed, said I always thought I was so smart, always planning and scheming, but I'd never understood the first thing about her. I kept her talking, asked why she was doing this. She went on a rant about how I'd ruined everything, how her parents looked at her differently now, how they'd never trust her again, how she'd had to defer Yale for a year, all because I couldn't just be a normal roommate. I wanted to scream that she'd brought it on herself by being disgusting and cruel, but I bit my tongue, agreed with her, said I was sorry, that I'd overreacted. She seemed surprised by my apology. Her voice softened slightly. She started talking about how things could have been different, how we could have been real friends if I'd just accepted her as she was. I made sympathetic noises while checking my GPS, still 2 hours from the cabin. I asked about Victoria, if she was really okay. Bella said Victoria was fine, just scared, that she actually felt bad about involving her, but it was the only way to make me understand how how it felt to lose someone important. We talked for another 20 minutes. I let her vent about her parents, her therapy, her ruined reputation, agreed with everything she said, told her she deserved better. By the end, she almost sounded like the old Bella, the one I'd thought was my friend. She said maybe we could work something out. Maybe Victoria could come home if I promised to make things right. I said I'd do anything. Then I heard sirens in the background of her call. Bella cursed, asked if I'd called the cops. I said no, which was technically true. She hung up. I pressed harder on the gas. If the police were there, I needed to be there too. Make sure Victoria was safe. I got to the cabin just as the sun was coming up. Police cars everywhere, lights flashing. I parked and ran toward the scene. An officer tried to stop me, but I screamed that my sister was in there. Detective Walter appeared and grabbed my arm, told me Victoria was safe. They'd found her locked in a back room, scared but unharmed. Bella had tried to run when she heard the sirens, but they caught her. I saw Victoria wrapped in a blanket sitting in the back of an ambulance. Ran to her and hugged her so tight. She was crying, kept saying she was sorry, that Bella had told her I was hurt and needed help, that she'd been so stupid to believe it. I told her it wasn't her fault. None of it was her fault. Then I saw Bella. She was in handcuffs being led to a police car. She looked small, defeated, nothing like the girl who'd terrorized me for months. Our eyes met. For a second, I saw something like regret flash across her face. Then it was gone, replaced by that same chaotic smile she'd worn when she told me about Miso. She mouthed something at me, looked like, "This isn't over." Then the officer pushed her head down and guided her into the car. The next few hours were a blur. Statements at the police station, Victoria getting checked at the hospital, my parents arriving and crying with relief. Detective Walter explained that Bella would be charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and a bunch of other things. Philip was cooperating fully in exchange for a plea deal. Turns out he'd kept all his text exchanges with Bella, every twisted plan she'd made. We went home exhausted but grateful. Victoria was quiet. The experience had shaken her badly. She kept apologizing for trusting Bella, for not being more careful. I told her again and again it wasn't her fault, that Bella was a master manipulator, that she'd fooled me for months too. Over the next few days, more information came out. The police had found journals in Bella's room at her parents' house, detailed plans for psychological torture she'd wanted to inflict on me, lists of my fears and insecurities she'd gathered during our late-night talks, notes about Victoria's schedule and habits. It was terrifying seeing how calculated everything had been. Bella's parents reached out through their lawyer. They wanted to apologize, said they'd had no idea their daughter was capable of something like this. They offered to pay for therapy for Victoria. We accepted. Victoria needed help processing what had happened. We all did, really. Philip's testimony revealed even more disturbing details. Bella had been planning this for months, ever since her parents had pulled her out of school. She'd stalked my social media, figured out Victoria's routines, manipulated Philip into helping by pretending to be interested in him romantically. When he'd started having second thoughts, she'd threatened to tell everyone he was a predator who'd been stalking her. Classic Bella move. The trial prep started a few weeks later. The prosecutor, a woman named Janet who wore the same gray suit every meeting, said we had a solid case. But Bella's family hired some expensive lawyer from the city. He kept filing motions and delays, trying to get evidence thrown out, claiming Bella had mental health issues that affected her judgment. The usual rich people defense tactics. Victoria had to testify about what happened in the cabin. She didn't want to, kept saying she just wanted to forget the whole thing. But Janet explained it was necessary, that without Victoria's testimony, Bella might get a lighter sentence. So Victoria agreed. My brave little sister. I spent hours going through old texts and emails with the prosecutor, finding proof of Bella's manipulation, her lies about the cat, the way she'd slowly isolated me from other people on our floor. Janet said it painted a clear picture of escalating behavior, but Bella's lawyer kept arguing she was just a troubled young woman who made bad choices, not a criminal mastermind. Then something weird happened. I got a letter, actual snail mail, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, just one line typed in the middle. "She's not done with you." My hands shook as I showed it to my parents. We took it to the police immediately. They dusted it for prints. Nothing. Checked the postmark. Mailed from Connecticut, where Bella's parents lived. Detective Walter increased patrols around our house, told us to vary our routines, be extra careful, but I couldn't shake the feeling we were missing something. Bella was too smart to send threatening letters while awaiting trial, unless she wanted us to think she sent it, unless it was another manipulation. I started digging into Bella's past, called some girls from her high school, found them through Facebook. Most wouldn't talk to me, but one, Maria, had stories, said Bella had done similar things before, targeted girls she felt had wronged her, made their lives hell through elaborate schemes, but she'd always been careful, never got caught. Her parents always bailed her out or paid people off. Maria told me about a girl named Cynthia who'd been Bella's roommate at summer camp. Bella had convinced the whole cabin that Cynthia was stealing from them, planted evidence, turned everyone against her. Cynthia ended up leaving camp early in tears. Years later, she was still in therapy. Maria gave me Cynthia's number. Cynthia's story was eerily familiar. The initial friendship, the sudden turn, the calculated destruction. She said Bella had seemed to enjoy watching her suffer, would smile whenever Cynthia cried. If she'd be willing to testify about Bella's pattern of behavior, she said yes. She wanted to stop Bella from hurting anyone else. I gave Cynthia's information to Janet. She was thrilled, said it would help establish a pattern of behavior, make it harder for Bella's lawyer to claim this was an isolated incident. We started building a list of Bella's previous victims. The number was staggering. Meanwhile, Victoria was struggling. She'd started having nightmares, would wake up screaming about being trapped. My parents found her a good therapist, Dr. Patricia something. She specialized in trauma. Victoria went twice a week, slowly started to seem more like herself. Then Philip reached out, said he had more information, stuff he hadn't told the police. We met at a diner near campus. He looked better, cleaner, like he was actually showering regularly. He told me Bella had other people helping her, not just him. A whole network of guys she'd manipulated, all thinking they were special, all willing to do anything for her attention. He gave me names: Steven from her psych class, Ryan from the coffee shop where she'd worked briefly, Joshua from her hometown. I wrote them all down. Philip said Bella had them all convinced that I was some monster who'd ruined her life, that helping her get revenge was justified. Some of them might still be loyal to her. I passed this information to Detective Walter. He said they'd look into it, but without evidence of actual crimes, there wasn't much they could do. Just knowing Bella wasn't a crime. Being manipulated wasn't illegal. I wanted to scream at the unfairness of it all. The trial date kept getting pushed back. Bella's lawyer filed motion after motion, claimed they needed more time to prepare, that Bella's mental state required evaluation, that the evidence was prejudiced. Janet told us this was normal, that we just had to be patient. But patience was hard when we were all looking over our shoulders. Then Victoria disappeared again, just for a few hours. But those were the longest hours of my life. She'd gone to the library to study, didn't answer her phone, wasn't at any of her usual spots. We were about to call the police when she walked in the door, said her phone had died and she'd lost track of time, but something was off. She seemed shaken. Later that night, Victoria came to my room, told me someone had approached her at the library. A guy she didn't recognize, said he had a message from a mutual friend, that I needed to back off or things would get worse. Victoria had run, spent hours hiding in different buildings on campus, too scared to come home right away. I was furious. Bella was locked up awaiting trial, but she was still pulling strings, still terrorizing us. I called Detective Walter immediately. He said they'd increase security, look into who might have approached Victoria, but without a clear description or evidence, it was hard to do much. My dad wanted us to move, just pack up and leave town, start fresh somewhere Bella couldn't find us, but my mom pointed out we couldn't run forever, that we needed to see this through, make sure Bella faced consequences. Otherwise, she'd just keep doing this to other people. I went back to campus to pack up the rest of my stuff from storage. Couldn't stand being there anymore. Too many bad memories. As I was loading boxes into my car, someone called my name. It was Cheryl, Philip's ex. She looked nervous, kept glancing around like someone might be watching. She told me she'd gotten weird messages, someone claiming to be Bella's friend, threatening her if she testified, saying they knew where she lived, where she worked. Cheryl was scared, thinking about backing out. I told her to go to the police. She said she had. They'd taken a report, told her to be careful. That was it. This was Bella's game. Even from custody, she was trying to intimidate witnesses, make people too scared to testify. I called Janet. She said it was witness tampering, a serious crime, but they needed proof Bella was behind it. The messages were from anonymous accounts. Could be anyone. I started reaching out to all the potential witnesses. Cynthia had gotten similar messages. So had Maria. Even some of the girls from our dorm floor, all being told to keep quiet or face consequences. But none of the messages could be traced directly to Bella. Her lawyer would claim it was overzealous friends acting without her knowledge. Then I remembered something. During one of our late-night talks, Bella had mentioned her cousin, some guy named Dakota who was really good with computers, always helped her with tech stuff. I wondered if this was one of the people Philip had mentioned. Started searching social media for Dakota Williams. Found them. Computer science major at a state school nearby. I didn't contact them directly. Instead, I gave the information to Detective Walter. Let the professionals handle it. A few days later, Walter called. They'd executed a warrant on Dakota's devices, found evidence they'd been creating anonymous accounts, sending threatening messages, all at Bella's direction through coded letters from jail. That was the break we needed. Dakota flipped immediately, told them everything, how Bella had been running her intimidation campaign from custody, using a code they'd developed years ago. They provided all the letters, the decoded messages, proof that Bella was behind everything. Bella was charged with witness tampering on top of everything else. Her bail was revoked completely. No more house arrest at her parents' mansion. She'd stay locked up until trial. Janet said this would likely add years to her sentence. Finally, some good news. The trial started 2 months later. By then, we had a mountain of evidence. Victoria's testimony was heartbreaking. She spoke clearly about being tricked, about the fear she'd felt locked in that cabin, about not knowing if she'd ever see her family again. Several jurors were crying by the time she finished. Cynthia testified about the summer camp incident. Maria talked about other girls Bella had targeted. Philip detailed how Bella had manipulated him, used his feelings to make him an accomplice. Even Dakota testified as part of their plea deal, explained how Bella had orchestrated everything from jail. Bella's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim, claimed her traumatic childhood had left her unable to form healthy relationships, that she needed treatment, not prison. He brought in expert witnesses to talk about personality disorders and trauma responses, but the jury wasn't buying it. When Bella took the stand, she tried to cry, claimed she never meant for things to go so far, that she just wanted me to understand her pain. But under cross-examination, her mask slipped. Janet got her angry. Bella snapped at her, showed the calculating person underneath the victim act. It was like watching the real Bella emerge. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Kidnapping, false imprisonment, witness tampering, conspiracy. The list went on. Bella stared straight ahead as they read the verdict. No emotion on her face. Her parents sobbed in the gallery. Her mom kept saying, "That's not my daughter," over and over. Sentencing was a month later. The judge gave her 15 years, said she was a danger to society, that her manipulative behavior and lack of remorse meant she needed serious intervention. Bella was led away in shackles. She didn't look at any of us, just kept staring straight ahead. We thought it was over then. Finally, Victoria was doing better in therapy. I'd transferred to a different school to finish my degree. My parents had stopped jumping every time the phone rang. We were healing, moving forward. Then I got another letter. This one was from Bella, from prison. She'd written it in pink pen, the same shade she used to wear. It was an apology. Said she'd been getting treatment, realized how much pain she'd caused, wanted to make amends, asked if I'd be willing to visit. it, to talk, to maybe find closure. I threw it in the trash, then fished it out and gave it to Detective Walter. He said prisoners were allowed to send letters. As long as they weren't threatening, there was nothing illegal about it. He'd keep it on file though, just in case. More letters came, one a week, all apologizing, all asking for forgiveness, all in that same pink pen. I stopped reading them, just handed them straight to Walter. He said Bella was probably trying to establish a pattern of remorse, maybe angle for early release. Classic manipulation. Victoria graduated high school with honors, gave a speech about overcoming adversity, didn't mention Bella by name but everyone knew. She got into a good college 3 states away, far from all the memories. We helped her move into her dorm. Her roommate seemed nice, normal. Victoria had insisted on a single room though, couldn't blame her. I finished my degree, got a job at a marketing firm, started dating a guy named Jules from my office, told him about Bella on our 3rd date. He didn't run away, said everyone had baggage. His ex had keyed his car and stolen his dog. We bonded over crazy ex stories. It was nice. 5 years passed. The letters from Bella stopped after the 1st year. We heard through the grapevine that she'd been transferred to a different facility, something about an incident with another inmate, manipulating them into attacking someone. Her parents divorced, her mom moved to Florida, her dad remarried quickly. Victoria became a doctor, said her experience made her want to help people heal. She specialized in emergency medicine, saved lives every day, still went to therapy once a month, said it helped keep her grounded. She met a nice guy named Marley at her hospital. They got engaged last spring. I was maid of honor at Victoria's wedding. During my speech, I talked about how brave she was, how she'd survived something terrible and come out stronger. I didn't mention Bella. That chapter was closed. We were writing new ones now, better ones. Last week, I got a notification. Bella was up for parole, first time. The victim notification system wanted to know if we'd be attending the hearing, if we wanted to make statements. My parents said we should go, make sure the board knew she was still dangerous. Victoria wasn't sure, said maybe it was time to let go. We went, all of us, sat in that sterile room and watched Bella tell the parole board how reformed she was, how she'd found religion, gotten her degree, helped other inmates. She looked different, older. Her hair was gray at the roots, no pink anywhere. She seemed smaller somehow. When it was our turn to speak, Victoria went first, talked about the impact on her life, the years of therapy, the trust issues, but also about forgiveness. Said she didn't want Bella released, but she also didn't want to carry hate forever. It was powerful. Several board members were visibly moved. I spoke last, told them about the patterns, the manipulation, the lack of real remorse, how Bella had terrorized multiple people over years, how she'd continued her behavior even from custody, how she was too dangerous to release. I kept it factual, no emotion, just the truth. The board denied parole, said Bella needed more time, more treatment, more evidence of change. She'd be eligible again in 3 years. As they led her away, Bella looked at me, just for a second, and smiled. That same chaotic smile, like she was saying this wasn't over, maybe it never would be. But I didn't care anymore. I had my life. Victoria had hers. We'd survived Bella Williams, thrived despite her, built something good from the ashes of that terrible year. She could smile all she wanted from her cell. She couldn't touch us anymore. We'd won, not by playing her games, but by refusing to play at all. We went out for dinner after the hearing, some little Italian place near the courthouse, laughed about normal things. Victoria's husband told bad jokes. My parents argued about the best way to cook pasta. Jules held my hand under the table. It was perfect. Bella was the past. This was our present, our future, and it was good.